Chapter 17. Philby, Kim Philby, 30. September 1942, London, England. Kim Philby sat back contentedly in his chair and listened. He was good at that. It was his job, listening and hearing what was actually said. That was the real trick. It was one thing to listen to people's words, but something completely different to hear their actual meaning. People said so much, but to look underneath that to the truth took a different set of skills. That was part of what had made him such a good reporter. It was what made him so good at his present job and his other job, the one no one could know of. That was the other secret: to be the person you were supposed to be, to believe the things you were supposed to believe. No one could see through that face because it was real as the things you truly believed, as real as the person you truly were. As long as you could keep those things separate, no one could ever see through you. He sat and listened. The beer was good, which always helped, and the man across from him was his friend. Philby had helped him and advised him. He had shown the man how to form the very organization, the newly minted OSS, that he was betraying with every word without even knowing it. Why would he ever question or suspect? And later, when Philby was alone, he would write up every word to be sent to his real masters to support his real loyalties.
He had been bugging me about it for years. How he and this fellow Sengier had this ore, that it was important. All the way back when I met him in 1939. He was a partner in this mine, and I thought he was trying to sell it like anyone would. But he kept insisting it was important. I mean, I'd never even heard of this stuff. What did it matter about purity? He was always bugging me to tell people about it. Well, it finally came up in a meeting. Top priority, critical to the war effort, all that. You should have seen their faces when I told them I knew someone selling it, that he'd been storing it in New York for 2 years, trying to find someone in the government to buy it. I thought this guy, Kenneth Nichols, was going to fall out of his chair. This big secret announcement of this mission to find this rare element. When I told them right there that a guy was selling it by the ton over on Staten Island, I should have asked for a raise.
Why was this so important? Why did the Americans want it? This mine in the Congo? Perhaps someone should look into that. And how did they know it was so important? Everyone used radium for watch dials, for everything. That was important, but the waste ore left over? What were they doing with that? Anything being made that high of a priority at that level had to have some meaning. Those thoughts fell by the wayside later as they continued talking. It was disturbing, the amount of intelligence the Americans had. Someone in the network must be compromised. One operation in particular stood out. He had a hard time keeping his face composed as the man across from him told him of one of his own plans. That alone would be disturbing, but this plan was not yet in operation. He had not initiated it yet. He had not yet reported his plans to anyone above him. He had not written anything down. He had not in fact discussed it with another living soul. He had conceived of it only the other night, and here it was being laid out in front of him in detail. He tried to ask about the source, but the man was cagey about where the information had come from. That was not uncommon. Knowledge of the source of information was often guarded more closely than the info itself. Still, he must know. How could this be? Could it be a guess? Was he trying to entrap him by telling him of all this? Maybe they had struck on the same idea as his own. But the other operations they had compromised were real. And what about this fellow at the mine? How had he known about the desperate need for what had been tailings, basically wastage, 2 years before America had even started to seek it for some secret project. Could they be connected? It crossed his mind that they had somehow learned to read someone else's thoughts. But if that was the case, why were they having a beer in a warm pub instead of having this conversation in a cell? And why would they be disclosing their knowledge of these plans to him, to flush him? They had all they needed to take him in right now if they had tied any of this to him. But then where did it come from? And how the hell did they know the details of the plans that he had dreamed up himself, lying in bed the other night? He knew beyond a doubt that no one else in the world shared this knowledge. It was almost like they could see into the future, but that was as absurd as the idea that they could read minds. He must write up a report for his superiors, but wasn't sure how to do it without sounding too crazy. He waved to the barmaid and ordered another round. He had to keep Wild Bill Donovan talking. He had to find out the source of his information.